Hi, I'm Charles Welch. I was born and raised in Northwest Ohio. For nearly 50 years, Toledo has been the place that I call home. The history of Toledo has become one of my passions. Some people say, let the past stay in the past. I say, let the past guide us to the future. Join me on my journey to find out who we were and how we got to be who we are. This is Untold, the hidden stories of Northwest Ohio. Hello and welcome to another episode of Untold. I'm your host, Charles Welch. I'm standing in front of the last existing building of a little known town called Ironville. Now my exact location is at the corner of Front and Millard, very close to the Port of Toledo. Now Ironville got its name from the iron industry that dominated the area at that time. We had a chance to stop by the National Museum of the Great Lakes and talk to local historian and media personality Lou Hebert about Ironville's rise and its ultimate demise. I'm here with someone who I've met for the first time, and we've been talking off the air, so don't worry about this, but I've a kindred spirit, Mr. Lou Hebert. Thank you for joining. I appreciate you coming.
Great to be here.
Now we're at downtown on the other side of the river, at the National Museum of the Great Lakes. And first of all, this place is beautiful. It's my first time down here, I hate to say it, but you've been around before. But we're here because there was a neighborhood that was close by that is no longer there, and I never even knew existed until recently. Can you tell me about that neighborhood?
Well, the name of the town, or the name of the neighborhood, was Ironville, which was actually its own town for many years. Ironville is on the east side of the river, and it is in the northern part, near the mouth of the river. In the area, it was in the area of, let's say, Front and Millard Street. That's sort of the general location, and it was right along the riverfront. And it was originally its own town when it started, back in the 1860s. It wasn't even a part of the city of Toledo, and really at that time, it was a very rural area. There was really nothing up there. What got it started was there was a company that moved in and started a blast furnace, a charcoal-fed blast furnace to make pig iron, and started to smelt iron, and iron ore that would come in from Lake Superior, and they would do that, and of course they had to make the charcoal there and everything else to do that, and that brought like 150 workers, and eventually over time, as other industries moved in, it became its own little town. There were oil refineries, and then there were other basket makers and other people who moved in, and it became sort of this little working class town, village, of about 500 or 600 people. The only structure that I know of that's still there, because it was pretty much eradicated in the 1960s, but the only building that's still there, that was built in 1915, is the old unit cast building. If you go up Front Street and just past Millard, and you'll see on the left, there is a sort of almost an Art Deco type building that used to have glass blocks in it. It's still there. It's a 2 or 3 story building. You'll see the building front remains. That was the unit cast building, and that's still there. It's the last remaining structure from the old Ironville area.
On this side of the river, right down the street.
Right.
That's amazing, because like I said, I never knew that even existed, and obviously it's gone, and we'll talk about that later on. But so tell me, what was it? What did it consist of? I mean, because you say it's its own town, so did they have stores? They have schools, or what?
Yes, they did. They had, in fact, there were. I think at its height there were about 200 homes. There were probably a dozen different retail businesses, everything from grocery stores to hardware stores, barber shops. They had I think 5 saloons.
Really?
So, yes. As I'm told by people who used to live there, they said they liked to drink.
I was about to say the iron workers probably needed a drink
so
after
there
work.
was, there was plenty of activity going on there, and they had a good time, and it was its own community. They had a school, they had 2 churches, they had a little park called the Lincoln Place Park that was right at Front and Millard Streets, and there was also a school. There was an elementary school that was called the Ironville Elementary.
So Ironville, I'm sorry to cut you off, but Ironville in itself was its, I know you already said this, but it was its own identified place. It was separate.
Right. It was its own place, and it was not even a part of the city of Toledo. It was not incorporated into the city until 1870, thereabouts, 1873. It became a part of the city of Toledo and was incorporated.
After Ironville's incorporation into the city of Toledo in 1870, the small but mighty town experienced an economic boom that would catapult it to new heights. Communities continued to thrive while business boomed. Many new businesses moved into the area, giving Ironville the validation it most certainly needed.
Within a short period of time, you had the railroads there. You had 2 major railroads that went through. You had the Paragon Oil Refinery. You had a ship building facility, not the Toledo shipyards, but another one up there. You had docks, so there was always activity, boat activity, and boats coming in and out. You had a basket factory, the Troffler Basket Factory. Really? Yeah, they made all kinds of baskets up there, and for farmers and merchants and stuff like that. And they were very well known. And of course, the other thing they had, which was kind of a surprise, was in the 1890s, this area had, of course, a big rush on natural gas. And down in Wood County, they had a lot of, started hitting oil. But, so people started drilling up in the marsh, up around this area, up around Ironville. And in 1897, they drilled a well, what would be at about Duck Creek and Millard. Where those, and they drilled this well. They thought it was going to be a dry well, and they decided to go ahead and drop some nitroglycerin in anyway to try to see if they could loosen up anything that was there. Well, sure enough, not only did they loosen it up, but I mean, there was a massive gush. Really? It was massive. It was, the oil poured out of this thing. It was called the Klondike Well, and there was so much oil coming out that the people on the site, the people who invested, they didn't want to lose this oil, so they were paying men $1 an hour. Think about that, 1897, paying them $1 an hour. That was a lot of money to go in this shower of oil and build a berm, a dike to contain it. That's how much oil there was.
Right here.
Right. Right in East Toledo.
Really?
Yeah, and that began and sparked really a lot of other, as news spread about this Klondike oil well, that has sparked a lot of other investment and other entrepreneurs to come in from other areas of the country.
We had an oil well in the 1970s right down the street.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, it just blows my mind. When I think of oil well, I think somewhere down in Texas at J.R. Ewing or something. So
no, this was the oil capital, Toledo, Wood County. This was the oil capital of the world at that time.
So let's get into the process of the section of the story where Ironville becomes no more. What happened? I mean, because you don't just wipe away 200 people or something. What happened and why?
We'll back up just for a second, because remember, at that time, in the late 1950s, what happened was we had, they built the St. Lawrence Seaway, they opened the Seaway for ocean traffic. And all of a sudden, Toledo became a major ocean port. By the late 50s, 1960s, we had ocean vessels coming in and out. Well, the Port Authority rightly saw the opportunity there to be able to host even more, ships coming in, and knew that they were going to be quite busy, so they wanted to expand the port and the Toledo Overseas Terminal operation. So with that as their guiding North Star, they said, okay, we're going to need this area called Ironville, this 68, 70 acres where it existed. We're going to need that. And so they bought out the homes and demolished the homes and opened it up to expand the Toledo Overseas Terminal. Sadly, it never happened. It just remained as vacant land for a long, long time. And nothing ever really, there were some oil tank farms that went in different areas, but for the most part, that expansion of the Toledo Overseas Terminal never happened south of the tracks. And so it just laid there as sort of a fallow land until just recently, when Cleveland Cliffs came in and built this, ironically, built what's essentially a pig iron furnace.
Right.
That tall structure where they make it's sort of iron ore pellets or whatever, so that they use in electric furnaces now.
That's so amazing that it can be a community, its own town, and then just be like. So over what period of time did they start to take away the homes? And like, did it last a few months, a few years?
I think it probably went on for about a year or so from the time they began, because obviously they had to clear out everything but they did, demolition usually happens pretty efficiently.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long. It takes, about 3 minutes to knock down a house as opposed to 3 months to build it.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to ask, when everything happened, during its peak and its demise of Ironville, what was going on in the city of Toledo at that time? Was it? I wonder how we were prospering.
Well, we were doing well. It was the city was going through a big change too. Mm-hmm. There was also a lot of urban renewal taking place. We were building an expressway system through Toledo.
Okay.
280 was already in, but the 475 expressway system was really still in the process of being built. And so that was happening. We were tearing down a lot of buildings in Toledo. So it wasn't just Ironville that was being demolished.
Wow. So Toledo was going through similar things.
Right. I think there was a real push at that time to modernize things.
Okay.
We saw the future. We saw these things happening in the future, this sort of the new modern era. We were fascinated by the future. We were starting the space race, and there were so many things, and I think people were ready to move away from the past and move to something new and modern.
So Toledo had a separate community, and it had its own schools and churches and families and organizations and clubs and everything.
Right.
And now it's completely gone.
It's completely gone, except for the people.
Except for the people.
Many of the people and the families, and of course the memories still live.
Wow. Well, listen, I had only recently heard about Ironville, but I was waiting to talk to you to get to know more about the city and the community of the town. Yeah. And you have not disappointed. I really appreciate you stopping by and telling us the story of Ironville. Yeah. Well, and I'm looking forward to meeting you to talk more about radio.
Okay, you got it.
We'll do that.
All right.
Louis Bear, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Sure.
A small, tight-knit community that thrived on the land in which it resided. Ironville, a simple name, yet a complex past that has since been lost in time. I hope you learned something today about our community and the memories that will last forever. For BCAN, I'm your host, Charles Welch, and we'll see you next time on Untold.